Hi, my name is Sophia. I am an incoming graduate entry medicine student at the University of Warwick, and today I'm going to walk you through my top tips for decision making. Today I'm going to go over different question types, when to skip, timing, how to use your notes, how to approach syllogisms, assumptions, interpreting information, probability, and I'll also go over the common traps that students miss. And if you're currently preparing for the UCAT, I've made a playlist that I'll pop in the corner here that goes over my other UCAT guides for the other sections, as well as my top tips and strategies for that. So for now, let's deal with decision making. The first thing that I want you to remember is please don't complete decision making in the order that it gives to you directly, because this will just waste time. You'll definitely find that some areas fit better to your strengths and others pull you down with the weaknesses. Remember that the questions in this section are uneven. Some will take only 25 seconds to answer, while others will take up to 2 minutes. Some drag and drop questions will ask you to evaluate 5 different statements, whereas there'll be easier questions like multiple choice ones that can be solved almost immediately. A long logical puzzle might deserve a guess, flag, and move on that you can come back to later. That's just you being strategic with your time, especially if the wording is quite convoluted. This is how you protect marks that are available to you, by prioritizing the questions that you feel confident answering rather than wasting time spending on one question that is rather complex. It's better to just take an educated guess, flag, and hopefully return to it if you have time at the end. UCAT is a time-crucial exam, so every second counts. If you're spending lots of time on one question, you're not helping yourself. In this exam, I want you to think in 3 different steps. Recognize the question type, use the specific method for that question type, then decide whether to stay, work it out, or move on. That last step may sound simple, and it's actually where a lot of people struggle, because initially it may seem easy and a straightforward approach, but then as you get into answering the question, you might notice that it's more complex and convoluted than you originally thought. Please just be wary of your time management here. If a question is taking longer than expected, take a guess, flag, and move on, because there's so many marks left for you to make in other question types. 2.5 minutes spent on one question could mean 3 questions answered in a different question type. Decision making has several different question types, and you will not be equally bad at all of them. Some of them go by like a breeze, and others may feel very, very difficult. You might be fine with probabilities, but very slow with syllogisms. So after you complete practice questions or mock paper, review your answers, label the question types so you can start to recognize different patterns amongst them. Is it a syllogism, a logic puzzle, interpreting information, or was it a Venn diagram style question? Once you know the exact question type in the section that keeps costing you marks, you'll be able to fine-tune your revision strategy and target those weaknesses so you can optimize your marks before your final exam date. If you're just saying that you feel like you're awful at decision making, but you're not sure what it is exactly that you're bad at in the section, that's not going to help you get those marks back. By reviewing properly, labeling those question types, and identifying a pattern of where you're losing these marks, you'll be able to fine-tune your strategy and focus that time on really understanding why you're losing those marks in those question types. Let's talk about syllogisms. These are the questions where you're given statements and you need to decide whether the conclusions follow. My first rule here is to make use of the noteboard or written paper that's provided to you. Do not keep chains of logic in your head, because they'll easily get muddled and you'll get the question wrong. You'll start switching terms around without even noticing it. The test center will usually provide you with a sheet of paper and a pen, so please make use of it. For syllogisms, I like to use either arrows or a simple diagram. If the stem says all A are B, some B are C, no C are D, you can make a tree that looks something like this. A arrow to B, some B overlap C, C does not overlap D. It doesn't have to look nice, but it's just something for you to refer to and keep that logic flowing. It ensures that your brain doesn't mess up those overlaps, and it will ensure that you can follow along clearly. If you don't write this down, your brain will usually be handling and juggling too much at once. The key with syllogisms is certainty, and that could only be achieved when you have something to reference to. So make sure you're creating these diagrams diagrams and trees to best understand the flow of the logic in the argument. If a conclusion definitely follows from the information, then it is a yes. If it doesn't follow, it is a no. If the information does not force the conclusion, then it is not a yes. One common mistake is reversing the logic. If all surgeons are doctors, that doesn't mean that all doctors are surgeons. Another mistake is linking two things just because they share a middle term. If A links to B and C links to B, that does not automatically mean that A links to C. Always check the direction of the relationship here and always note it down as it is stated and do not reverse the logic. Now let's move on to logical puzzles. These are the ones that mention people, dates, rankings, objects, places, or conditions. This is where students can often burn a lot of time from their exam because they try to finalize the logic puzzle in its entirety. You do not always need to finish the puzzle. Oftentimes, you can answer the question without fully completing the puzzle. If the question has people and days, draw a table. If it has rankings, draw a line. If there are categories, then make columns. Then always add that fixed information first. After that, you can start looking for hidden constraints. These tiny constrictions matter so much because it allows you to eliminate and figure out where things will go. Always start with those fixed stated facts. And then from there, you can start looking for those hidden constraints. And once the answer appears, stop. You don't need to complete the full logic puzzle. You'll just waste time. Your working out is not going to gain you marks. It's your answer that's going to gain you marks. Let's talk about interpreting information. These questions can sometimes appear really heavy and difficult because they will include lots of information, sometimes a graph, a table, or even both. Your job is to avoid reading everything with the same level of attention. For text-heavy questions, read the statement or question first. Then go back to the stimulus with a target. If the statement is about cost, find the cost section. If it is about patients over the age of 65, go and find that group. If it's about policy change, find where the change is discussed. This is kind of similar to verbal reasoning, where you'll find your keywords or your key information. You don't want to be wandering back through the text or stumbling through the tables multiple times. You'll just lose so much time doing that. You are in the constant pursuit of evidence that is relevant. For tables and graphs, don't automatically dive into the numbers. First, make sure you read the title and understand it. Then have a look at the axes, then the columns and row headings, and then the units. This ensures that the information you are understanding is accurate and there's no chance for slipping up. Only after that you can start calculating. A lot of errors happen when people use the right numbers but in the wrong way. They use a total when the question asked for only. They include others when the question excludes them, or they read a column as a row. So before you calculate anything, ask yourself, what is this number actually showing me? Make sure you understand the layout first, then extract only the data that the question is asking you for. Let's move on to discuss recognizing assumptions. These questions can gain you a lot of marks if you're very strict with your answering. An assumption is what the argument relies on. So first, identify the subject. Who or what is the argument about? Then identify the claim. What is the argument trying to prove? After that, test the options. The correct option should directly support the argument. It shouldn't drift into a wider issue, and it shouldn't just sound sensible. Make sure not to allow your personal bias or opinions to sway your answering here. It has to directly support the argument. For example, if the argument says that longer GP appointments would improve patient satisfaction, the assumption is that appointment length affects satisfaction. So if there's an answer about the NHS needing more funding, that is too broad and it definitely won't be the correct one. It might be true and it might be something that you agree with, but that doesn't mean that it's the correct answer. But it's not the specific assumption that holds the argument up. Watch out for red flags like sweeping statements, emotional wording, answers that talk about a different group, or even answers that may feel morally correct but they don't support the argument. Aim to do these questions quickly. Under a minute is a really good target to have once you've practiced them. Moving on, let's talk about evaluating arguments. These are the questions where you'll choose the strongest argument for or against a statement. Personally, I found using this framework quite helpful. The framework acronym is called REEFs. R is for relevant, E for evidence-based, E for emotionally neutral, for factual, and S for sensible. A strong answer is one that answers the exact question. It gives a reason and avoids dramatic language, and it doesn't rely on huge assumptions. A weak argument is often one that will sound quite intense. This would be disastrous for everyone, or people would never accept this. That use of extreme language. Those answers might seem strong because they sound confident, but confidence isn't always right. A better argument is usually something that's more specific. Moving on, let's touch upon Venn diagrams. These are very, very easy to get wrong and miss marks out on if you get the wording wrong. The most important word to keep an eye out for is usually only. People who study biology is not the same as people who only study biology. People who like A or B is not the same as people who like A and B. At least one means one or more. Start out by drawing the Venn and begin with the overlap if it's given. Then work out the only sections. From there, you can work out the outside group if needed. Do not double count the overlap. That is a classic Venn diagram mistake and one that I've made a few times in my practice. Remember that the overlap has already been included in both groups. So if you add everything without adjusting, your total is likely to be wrong. If a question asks for only, subtract the overlap. If it asks for at least one, then include the overlap. If it asks for neither, then look outside of the circles. A general rule for this is that the maths is usually quite simple and straightforward with Venn diagrams, but it's often the wording that tricks people out. So keep an eye on that and really pay attention to what it's asking you. Let's have a look at probability questions and statistics. Oftentimes these can look quite intimidating, but they are often some of the easiest marks to get once you know the method. Use your calculator. Don't just try overwhelm your brain by doing lots of mental maths to prove a point, unless you're very, very confident. No one is giving you extra marks for your mental arithmetic. The calculator is there to use in decision making, so use it where the marks matter. For probability questions, keep the structure simple. Probability equals wanted outcome divided by total possible outcomes. If the question asks you for the probability of something not happening, use the complement rule. That means 1 minus the probability that it does happen. This can save you a lot of time. For example, if the probability of rain is 0.2, the probability of no rain is 0.8. You don't need to do any long calculations for that. Also, remember to compare values in the same format. Fractions, decimals, and percentages are easy to misread when the timer is giving you pressure. So convert them. Make sure that you're working in the same values to make your working out much easier and much more straightforward. 1 in 4 is 0.25 and 25% are all the same in value. A 15% reduction means the new value is 85% of the original. Those conversions are simple, but under time pressure, silly errors can happen. Doing a small thing by making sure you're working in the same format, so if you're given the values where some are in percentages and some are given as decimals, why not convert them into the one that you feel most confident with? So then you don't need to worry about juggling all of those in your mind. Now let's talk about drag and drop questions. These can be dangerous because they feel quick, but each small statement needs checking. Use the text given always and never your outside knowledge. The statement either follows from the information given or it does not. Watch out for language mismatches. The stem might say may and the option might say will. The stem could say associated with, but the option could say caused by. These are definitely not the same, and this is something to keep a huge eye out for when you're doing your exam. Also, remember the two-part trap. One half of the statement may be true, and the other half may be wrong. If any part of the statement fails or doesn't correlate, it is wrong. Make sure you read the whole statement. Don't just click yes because half of it matches. I'd like to spend some time talking about the noteboard / piece of paper that you'll be given in your exam. Use it more than you think you'll need to. A lot of people might use it for certain question types and then sort of ignore it. But honestly, the best thing to do is note it down. This section is a huge test on logic, on arguments, on probabilities. So this is the section that you'll probably make the most use of it. Tables for puzzles are super helpful, arrows for syllogisms, Venn diagrams for overlaps. If you keep trying to hold everything in your head, it just won't stick, and it's so easy for language and numbers to become mismatched and jumbled. Remember that your working memory gets tired. The UCAT is an intense exam, so your noteboard is so important to use. How about timing? How much time should you spend on each question? If you do the maths, the target is roughly around 64 seconds per question. But don't use that as a strict rule for every single question type, because definitely others take a lot longer than certain types. You can keep this number in mind as a warning sign. If you notice that you've spent 90 seconds on a question already, it's probably time to guess, flag, skip, and move on. The timer on the screen will start turning yellow when you approach the end of the section. You don't want to be there when there's lots of easily answered questions ahead. So prioritize your answering strategy. Be strategic, know what question types you are better at. Get those easy marks first. How do you revise decision making effectively? Use these 3 phases to help you. First is your foundation, then it's pacing, and then finally endurance. In the foundation phase, which will be at the beginning of your revision for the UCAT, use your on-time practice to understand the question types, expose yourself to them, and practice. From there, you'll be able to review, identify which question types you struggle with, and refine your strategy. Practice using your noteboard, doing those arrows, making those tables. Understand what works for you, because what works for one person doesn't necessarily equate to help the other. In the pacing phase, this is something you'll move on to quite quickly through your revision. That's when you'll start using question sets that are timed. That's where you're going to start practicing that skip, flag, guess, move on. Finally, in the endurance phase leading up to your exam, this is where you'll do your full timed questions and full sets of mocks. But remember, as I've reiterated several times on this channel, the revision that matters most is your reviewing. Every time you're going to review a set of practice questions, a mock paper, that is the thing that's going to change your score. Identify where you're losing marks and target that in your revision practice moving forward. If you found this video helpful, please do subscribe to this channel and leave a like, and please do comment down below what you'd like to see next. Is there any section of the UCAT that you're personally struggling with or that you would find helpful for me to cover in any future videos? At the end of this video, you'll also see a link to my UCAT playlist. Have a look at that and I'm sure you'll find it helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video. See you later. Good luck with your exam. High five.